going to the meeting and I thought she was bringing somebody, so I don't know if she's over at the government center or what.
Well, Cynthia's Jahan has joined us, so that's good. But Cynthia is on the same email distribution that we are, so she should be aware of it. See, I'm not the only person outside. There's somebody else who's, braving the insects, as the case may be. All right, so we have that going, and my lights have gone on. So which one of the monitors is not facing me? Okay, there I am. Okay. All right, so what I have, and I want to show this, my emails, mail. Okay. And let's go back to SDC and Evan.
Is he not going to take questions? He just sent you a statement?
Yeah, I'll read you what he wrote back and forth.
Okay.
In fact, what I'll do is I'll share my desktop so people can see his thoughts on this. Okay, hold on. Okay, share. Mail. Share. Okay, so you should be seeing an email that I got. And it's not yet 7, so I won't go into it in more detail than we have, but he's given us okay, so I've got a series of comments from him, which I will read. Now let me see if I can make this full dimension. Ba, 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 ba. Let's see, can I tell it to make me okay, wait, one thing I have to do is recording is in progress. That's good. So we're being recorded as we're doing that. All right. So I want to make this as big as I can. And instead of opening it, I closed it. That's always a problem.
It went away.
It should come back. There we go. Okay. So, and I'll make this bigger if I can. I think that helps, right? Okay. So, and maybe I can even get rid of these two things. View, hide mailbox list, and view, hide, tab bar. I didn't want that. So filtered by.
It went away again.
I know. I'm butchering myself.
They basically said they were working on their planning commission presentation and had put out the new proffers. And they knew that nothing they could say would change some minds that were already made up, and hoped that we'd all understand that why they weren't going to be answering questions tonight. Did I get that right, Jeff?
Basically, you'll see that shortly. If I can figure out how to do this without screwing myself up, which I have done already. All right. So I want to get rid of this. And I don't want sort by date. Okay. And now I'm looking. So I had Evan. And today is this date and info. All right, what did I do? I did something bad.
I think the font was bigger before.
Well, it was. I just lost the message I wanted to send you, show you folks. So now I got to find it again.
Well, I mean, I think Jahan summarized it, and I think that's a.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that. I want to give him his due, if that makes sense. Okay. So where is this? Okay. Well, come on, Evan. I want this. I think there's a way to hide this too. Okay. Okay. View everything. Show tab bar. Okay. View. Sort by date. And show mailbox list. Okay. So now I want to sort by find, edit, find, mailbox search. And Evan, there we go. Okay, there we go. And all right, so there we go. I'm back to where I was. Okay, so I asked Evan if he wanted to join us, and now you can see this. And now I'm going to make this bigger. Okay. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for reaching out. Unfortunately, my client are not available to come Monday for our third meeting. I know there's a lot of interest in this matter, so we're working diligently to prepare for our PC hearing on Wednesday. I hope you understand. We have tried our best to be as open and transparent as possible. We appreciate your efforts to run information and civil meetings, but it's clear that there's some in the community who already have very solidified opinions that no amount of information our team will change. Now, from that, he gave more information. So even though he said that, he changed his mind.
Yeah.
So he says, here today, this morning, we resolved all of the outstanding issues. We've submitted a revised sound study that clarifies that we are assuming 27 generators as requested by Mrs. Shang. We've also proffered not to exceed 50 dBA at the residential property line during normal operations and 60 during testing emergencies. These are all within what is considered appropriate for residential small town conditions, well below background airport noise and well below Fairfax County regulatory limits. We also did a second drone flight for staff and Supervisor Smith to demonstrate how difficult it will be to see the data center from Pleasant Valley. This is particularly true that the highest point in the neighborhood is nearly a mile away. And we all verified that 110 feet is not a concern for them. We committed to dedicating the 67 RPA land to the FCPA after first clearing any invasive bamboo debris. We are committed to cut-off fixtures for all parking and building mounting lighting and limiting lighting to a corrected color temperature of 3,000 Kelvin or less, which is considered less harsh and more conducive to relaxation, sleep. We're committed to a diesel storage design proffer guaranteeing the incorporation of multiple safety features in site designed to prevent the flow of any accidental release toward the RPA and retain the on-site cleanup with draining and an oil water separator. Finally, we have agreed to proffers to pre-treat and monitor wastewater to ensure that an acceptable concentration of chloride, fluoride, and sodium are maintained and that no bromide is used. He also then has one more quick point for you to consider tonight. Since the start of this project, we have been encouraged by staff to meet or exceed the standards at the Renaissance Technology Park Southie was held to. As you may recall, that was a much larger data center project in Sully that was approved in July a year ago. As you can see from the attached lots, and I'll bring those up, that project, like ours, requested a special exemption of increased height to 110. They want 110. They propose a 0.82423 FAR. We're proposing a 0.8 with a total GFA of 2.136 square feet. We're proposing 402. The development includes a substation and 4 data center buildings, all but one of which is significantly larger than the one we are proposing. To serve such a large data center installation, the development package includes approximately 165 backup generators. We're proposing 27 with enclosures designed to limit sound to 80 dBA at a distance of 30 feet. Our enclosures limit sound to 75 at 23. Closest point between their building generators and the nearby Copper Ridge neighborhood is 771 feet. Our distance is 2376. Finally, they are much closer to the Horseman Creek watershed than we are to the Cub Run. So we've had 2 meetings on Renaissance before voting in support of it. The Board of Supervisors later approved it with a total of 13 development conditions. We have negotiated 67 draft proffers, 36 relate to the data center, with staff that go far beyond the Renaissance conditions in terms of regulating noise, impacts on the RPA, and wastewater, among other things. I hope we keep this all in mind and holds us to the same standard in Renaissance during deliberations tonight. So let me pull up the presentation he provided today. Okay, now I have to share this, so I'm going to stop sharing what I'm sharing, then I'm going to share something else, okay? And now I want to share and share alike, share, and PowerPoint, okay? Okay, so you should be seeing the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to make it big. I'm going to go into presentation mode. Okay, so you should see the technology park that we talked about last year. And that, if you remember, was on Redskin Park. And I'll see if I can make this even bigger. But okay, so let's look at the next slide. And the Renaissance Technology Park. And here's the information that they have for the park. If you remember seeing that, there were the 4 buildings. And if you look at the last picture, you'll see where the Horsepen Creek area is, and the Copper Ridge neighborhood, which is here, and it's 771 feet. At least from what I hear from Evan, their philosophy is they meet or exceed everything that the Renaissance people did, and the Renaissance people were closer to communities, closer to the Raritan area, had fewer generators, and they said, if you approve the Renaissance, why would you not approve us? That is in essence what I understand Evan saying.
Mhm.
It'll be up to us to decide, but his thoughts are, you would prove this, we're better than this, what's your problem? I'm sorry if I'm saying it too smartly, but I think that's what he's saying. Does anybody want to ask me any questions about the slide presentation I just went over? Hearing none, I'm going to stop presenting. Okay. Has anybody got, all right, participants? Anybody would like to speak?
Sure. I can try and answer his question. I think there's some pretty easy answers, and just a couple concerns I have. I know there were people who wanted to be here tonight and I wonder if they've gone to the government center thinking there was a meeting. But having said that, there's a couple answers to Evan's question. And this, I think part of it is that this site is much worse because it's on Cub Run and it's going into the reservoir. Horsepen Run, I think, goes north.
It goes west and then north. You're right.
And another issue is, I think we know a lot more now than we did a year ago. And this is also, I think, following the two variances from DEQ that came up earlier this year. And I think it was not at all clear a year ago that we were maxed out on the capacity of the electrical grid, that we were maxed out on the air quality standards, and that the specific reason for DEQ to have to lower the air quality standards was because of the diesel generators running to keep the power uninterrupted to the data centers. And I think that those issues are much more fleshed out now. I think also the neighbors of this, to the extent that factors into this, the neighbors are much more focused and opposed. I mean, the meeting that Kathy had, or the second meeting, the one where they, I can't remember now who all was there, but it was sort of in both rooms at the same time, standing room only crowd at one point. And some guy had asked, by show of hands, I forget if it was who all is opposed to this, and every hand in the room went up except for Kathy and the staff people facing the audience. And I thought that was a level of engagement and concern that we hadn't seen on anything for a long time, and certainly not on those cases. So I think to the extent, as a threshold matter, he's asking what's the difference. I think there are big differences. This is apples and oranges. We know a lot more now. We've had the DEQ crisis. This is going into the reservoir, et cetera. That would be part of it. I would have, I mean, my mind is probably made up, but I still had sent him some follow-up questions that were never answered. And I thought they were legitimate questions. And I would have asked some questions tonight, even about his email, which is a little coy in a couple respects, and I think susceptible of cross-examination. Perhaps the issue of the height, I don't think height was ever that big a deal, except as it concerns the airport. And what he says in the email is that the airport doesn't care about the 110 feet. And I think that's always been true. What the airport cares about is the 342 feet above sea level, or whatever that is. And nobody has objectively correlated the applicant's request for 110 feet and the airport's concern about the height above sea level. And I think, as Jahan has pointed out, if you use the measurement on page 8 of the addendum and add 110 feet to that, they're 2 or 3 feet into the prohibited three-dimensional zone. And no one has explained that. And that kind of simple explanation, a straightforward answer to a reasonable question, is something that I think they should have done. The same with the park authority. They've always been, the applicant has always been ready to unload this stink bomb. They don't want it. They don't want to pay taxes on it. They want to get rid of it. The question was not whether they would convey it. The question is whether the park authority will accept it. I think in the package that they sent last week showing a path for trail dedication, for example, through the floodplain, they have a sort of meandering path more or less paralleling the stream. There are two places in which the trail easement is crossed by the outfalls from uphill. They're about 50 feet wide. They're going to be deep. I don't know how deep they are, but these two sort of chasms running east-west, perpendicular to where the trail would go. If I understand, the proffer is to dedicate the easement. They're going to disturb the stream valley to create these two sort of spillways or ditches. I mean, they're 50 feet wide. I don't know if it's really a ditch, but anyway, in order for the trail to be usable, there would have to be at least two bridges to cross the two outfalls. And if they're not committing to doing anything, either bridging that or constructing that or providing a fund from which that would be done, then it falls on the park authority, I think, to float a bond, and they do bonds every so often, but to pay for the design and construction of the two bridges over these two gashes that they're making going down the hill. And I think that issue could have withstood a little cross-examination. And is the park authority really on board with this, or are they still saying, we're ready to dedicate to the park? The park authority may or may not want it. I think they said they would clean up the bamboo and something else, but again, it wasn't an unequivocal statement that the park authority is ready to take it. The drone flight, well, they may well have done that. And again, I don't know. I wish they would have done a balloon or something and done it at a time when people could see it, so that it's not just their unilateral statement that we did another drone for Supervisor Smith, which proves that we're right, because I don't think anybody saw it. And most applicants that have come through that had a height thing, Trinity Center, they flew a balloon. The monopole on Braddock Road, they flew a balloon. The monopole by the battlefield, they flew a balloon. The monopole up on Bull Run Post Office Road, they flew a balloon. And they did it on a Saturday morning when people could go out and see it when they were home. What were his other responses? I'm just in no particular order. I'm rattling around, but they more or less answered the questions. I mean, some of the questions, but they have not answered others at all. Haven't even come close.
Okay.
Kathy,
His email talks about 27 generators in the study.
Okay.
He talks about the exceeding, not exceeding 50 dBA.
The 27 generators, he hasn't provided the specifics as to exactly what those generators are. It's 27 generic generators. There are generators and there are generators. Some are louder than others. I spent a lot of time this week with the guy from the Southern Environmental Law Center, and apparently there are strata of generators, and there's something called Tier 4, which is cleaner and better. And if you can get them to commit to Tier 4, it's not as bad as just generators anyway. This is essentially a filthy use at times with the carcinogenic particulates coming out of the generators. There is cleaner technology that they could use or could put a sunset provision on and use later or something like that. and they've done absolutely nothing. I don't know why, compared to a year ago, we wouldn't expect or ask or want them to do something other than diesel, or not put a time limit on it, or commit to like the tier 4 diesel or something like that. And they've been very coy all along about what kind of generators are these. I'm not sure that any kind of diesel is appropriate on a sort of a discretionary special exception approval if we're maxed out on air quality, if the grid doesn't support, if there's not an electrical infrastructure to support this, and if, as we found out, I think on one of the ones on 28, we're paying for it.
Yep.
We will be paying for the substation and the transmission line, which brings up maybe the most important point of all. How can the commission evaluate the impacts of this use on the neighborhood, on the community, on the stream valley, on the park, without disclosure now of where is the substation, where are the transmission lines? And Kathy sort of poo-poos that, says, oh, Dominion will work that out with Novec later, don't worry about it. Well, if we wait, then the data center is approved, and then we say, oh, well, we have to approve the transmission lines, or we have to approve the substation, or maybe it's a by right use, and no one will answer that question straight on, a clear, sharp, forthright answer. Is the substation by right? Is the transmission line or transmission lines, are they by right? Unless we know where the substation is and where the transmission lines are, how do we know what the impact is on the stream valley or the woods? And the applicant will say, oh, well, we're not clearing the trees.
So wait a minute. Isn't this a cart before the horse? You don't get the transmission lines if you don't approve the data center, but you're telling me you can't approve the data center unless you know the transmission lines. But one follows the other. They're not simultaneous.
The data center creates the need for the transmission lines, and unless we know where that is, it's a big question mark. I don't think we want the transmission lines in the stream valley, and they're going to say, well, we're not doing it, Dominion's doing it. Well, cutting down the trees, who cares who's doing it? It's the same result, the same amount of site disturbance, everything else. I think they know. They would have to know. They know already. They've done their due diligence. They know exactly what they're going to do. But they just, it's going to be something bad. It would make this even more controversial.
Yep.
And I bet there are other issues and other questions of mine that didn't get answered, but that this isn't Renaissance. We're not as ignorant as we were a year ago. I think the email to you isn't robust enough to change my mind, absent straight answers to simple questions, which we've never really gotten. And I've probably left some other issues out, but this is an application by a landowner, although some of the richest companies in the world are behind this campaign, and they have very sophisticated consultants, I think, designed to, or the campaign is designed to get us off asking some of the harder questions. Say, oh, it's okay, it's great, it's wonderful, because they need these things approved. And it's a high impact use on a terrible site. And I don't think my questions have not been answered. And I don't think the neighborhood's questions have been answered either. I'll shut up because I'm going on and on, but his questions are easy to answer. My questions or the community's questions, I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else? Lewis, Jahan? Now, I've been told that there were people at the Sully Community Center. I've encouraged them to If they have computers or cell phones to log on, I told them to go to the website. The people there should have gotten the mail that each of you got as well. And I had hoped that Evan would attend, and if he had attended, we would have had this meeting in person.
Another question we might
ahead.
ask is, in the proffers, they say that at the submission of the final design drawings, they're going to reassess the need or the adequacy of the sewer. And if a new sewer is required, that they will pay a proportional share. So that's one thing. I mean, I'm assuming that Penzance is building this to lease it to various entities. It's not like Google is building this for its own use, and they know how intensive the data energy needs are going to be. And as I understand it, the intensity of the data machinations affects how much water they use, and therefore how much wastewater they're going to be putting out into the system. And then it also asks the question, why is nobody talking about how much water they're going to be drawing? And do we have enough water? And has anybody talked to Fairfax County Water? And when Bennett and I had a brief meeting with Kathy and was kind enough to have me sit in, Kathy hadn't talked to Fairfax Water, and I thought that was pretty astounding. Nobody in staff had either. They were asking, well, who should we talk to? It's mind-boggling. And especially because we are in an area where there are small businesses and neighborhoods that are on wells. If we lose our aquifer capacity, we could have areas of the county that are unusable until there's an infrastructure retrofit. What the hell do we do then? I don't know. So,
Go ahead.
Jim Neighbors. So if the data center and the warehouse don't get approved, we're going to have an 850 car parking lot there. Is that correct? Because it's a car dealership. That's what's defaulted to 2020. 850 car parking lot. That's what I read in the application. Is that correct? It's going to default back to that.
That's the default approved action, but it doesn't make any difference if there is not an auto dealer wants to build there.
We're assuming there's no market there, and like it's approved for 850 spots. I mean, we could assume worst case scenario is 850 cars there, moving in and out of the auto park every day, right? That's maxed out.
But that's not
Diesel trucks,
850
everything.
cars every day moving in and out. I mean, that's an exaggeration. Sorry.
But okay, say it's 400 cars a day. Say take half that, and diesel trucks moving in and out of the auto park every day. It's not going back to land. It's not going back to woods. Something's going to be built there. It's approved. The market will drive it, whether it's a data center, warehouse, or dealership. Is that correct? I want to make sure I'm correct.
Yeah, somebody's going to use the land for something. I mean,
But
it doesn't
been
sound to
zoned.
me
It's not
like,
woods
I
anymore.
think
It's no more
it
woods.
could be the car dealership, but I think if it is, I think part of the problem was the access. And if they don't have an ingress egress easement from the auto park side, it won't happen off of 50. That doesn't really work. They needed access through the auto park, and they haven't explicitly said that, but my understanding was on this case they were saying they didn't have that, and that may have been what killed.
They had the access to the park, but they couldn't make deliveries through the park, in the sense that you and I were interested in the cars at that location to drive in and out. Deliveries would not take place that way.
It's pretty
answer
simple.
Jim's
Hold on a
question,
second, guys.
I think
Pretty
it
simple.
can be whatever use is by right, and I think the parcel is split zone, so they'd probably have to do a rezoning anyway. But if the site had worked for anything, it probably would have been developed in conjunction with the auto park 30 years ago. It's a swamp with a little mesa in the middle of it that you could put a building on that most uses won't want because the access is so bad and it's so hard to get to. So it is possible someone could do the prior approval. It's also possible somebody could do a by right use. And I can't remember now if that's all, it's not all I-4. It might be C8 up at the top or C something.
Right, I think it's C8 along 50.
But
It's
part along
C8
50,
and
it's
I-5 and I-3.
it's mostly RPA. I mean, it's going to be very, very, it won't be retail probably. It's not great for a warehouse because you can't get to it. That's another thing, that loop-de-loop through Lafayette. I mean, that's ridiculous. And they're saying, oh, well, you know, it's okay. Well, it's not okay. And that loop-de-loop, you're going to have to turn left at Pleasant Valley Road and go all around the ring road in Lafayette. That conflicts in two places with the cars stacked up on Pleasant Valley Road waiting to turn on 50. I mean, that's another issue. But to answer Jim's question, it could be a lot of things. It could be the prior approval if they can make it work. I'm skeptical that there's a user out there that wants that site for anything, or it would have happened before. And in fact, some of the other sites on the other side of 50, as junky as they are way better than this because you can get to them. On this one, I don't know what the use would be. And I'm wondering if they ever had a car dealer, if they were just thinking, well, this is a logical add-on to the auto park if we can make it work. And we don't know that. But
Well, this has been, the previous occupant owned the property and had no luck getting its use as planned. They wouldn't be spending all this time and effort doing what they're doing if they had had somebody multiple years ago implement what they had asked to do.
well, I know
Cynthia
there were
has
some
her hand up.
discussions with the park authority about taking part of the Stream Valley, and the park authority didn't want it because it was such a mess. But I thought that the parcels that they were saying absolutely not were to the south and adjacent, and not necessarily this. Mary Cortina knew, I think, what was going on, but whatever it is, there are by right uses that could go on there, but they're going to want, I think most people would want either access from the auto park side or visibility from 50 and more than a right in, right out. And if this site was commercially viable, it would have been like what you see all along 50 that isn't in a floodplain and isn't in RPA, like the Dominion stuff, the Dominion Supply, the light fixture store further down, or the shopping center with the Wendy's and the 7-Eleven, and that sort of pattern of development. But this site, it's all floodplain and RPA and, you know, whatever. Well, Lou has it. I can see Lou has his hand up, so I'll shut up.
Well, yeah, my hand was up because Cynthia's had her hand up for a while. I wanted to let her speak.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just have 4 things I want to say. Number one, the truck traffic is horrible. So the warehouse having to have those trucks go through Lafayette Business Park, a 2-lane road with an on-road bike path on it, and within 220 to 300 yards of like a bunch of homes in Pleasant Valley brings Route 50 to us, and that's unfair. The second thing I wanted to say was that, you know, even though the data center would be there, they still would, of course, have truck traffic. Basically, anybody having the Route 50 eastbound only access for trucks is going to have that problem. But the warehouse, especially with hundreds of trucks daily having to go through that route, because no trucker is going to spend an extra 45 minutes driving up and around the airport just to get to the Route 50 eastbound access. The second thing I wanted to say was noise. Of course, everybody's, saying that, oh, you're not going to hear that much noise, it's fine. But what they're not taking into account is the frequency of that noise. And what I mean by frequency is hertz, and the tone. So the tonal noise is at a low level. And we're finding out all over the country now that that noise has large wavelengths, it travels great distances, and it's a 24/7 in your brain kind of noise. And again, the noise ordinance basically does not cover us because it's measured in dBA, whereas low tonal noises really should be measured in dBc or dBB, sorry, excuse me. But the problem here is that the noise ordinance does say, though, that the people have a right to and should be insured of an environment free from sound that jeopardizes the public health, welfare, peace, and safety, or degrades the quality of life. And that is the policy of the board, to prevent such noise to the extent such action is not as long as such action is not inconsistent with the state or federal law. So we know, we were even called the affected area by the applicant because they know we will be affected by this noise. But the problem here is that it's not being measured in a way that is conducive to show you how bad that noise can be. And the last 2 points I want to make is the height. Come on, guys. We're talking 110 feet. The adjacent buildings, the Sheehy, the Oarsman Toyota, the Jaguar, they're all under 30 feet. They're 26 feet, there's 28.7, and there's 27.4. 110 feet, that's absolutely out of character, not within harmony in this area. And if anybody thinks it is, I don't know, maybe you need to go back and get some eyesight check there. But that is just ridiculous. We know that the topography there, the elevation is at 250 to 260. They have to do serious soil reclamation because of the fact that the soil is not even graded. It's very, quote unquote, very limited, according to the USDA, for even a 40-foot tall building. You put 110 feet, you're going to have to really shore up that soil. That means you're going to risk getting into airport navigation space. Why are we taking that chance? And then lastly, my point is the electricity. We already know from the Loudon Reliability Exchange Group, which met on the 13th of September, that Dominion is looking to put transmission lines from Loudoun County through Chantilly to support a data center in Fairfax County. Now, I don't know which one that is. They just said to support. Yet they're coming through the RPA, and they're allowed to do that. So what we're saying here is, sure, go ahead, destroy the RPA, go ahead, destroy the character of the area, go ahead and bring all that noise from either the data center or the trucks, because what, we don't care? I mean, I'm sorry, that's to me, this is just not even worth our time and effort to consider it, because it's so far out of what should be done in that area according to the comprehensive plan, and nothing that they're doing is benefiting the community at all. It's just a money grab. That's all I have to say.
Well, I agree with you about the comprehensive plan, Cynthia. I was one of the people who sat on that Dulles Suburban South Comprehensive Plan Committee for I don't know how many years, until it split off into the Westfields kerfuffle. But I mean, because it is so inharmonious with the comprehensive plan, that's why they're offering to pay 27 cents per building square foot to the park authority to create ball fields someplace. But at $108,000 for the data center, you can't really build a ball field for that, can you? I don't think so. I mean, they're trying to give money to ignore the comprehensive plan.
Agreed. And can I just say one other thing about that? They did enhance the proffers this last round for the dedication of the land. But even Fairfax County Park Authority said, nope, we'd really like a stronger commitment. And there is no reason for them to actually dedicate that land. Both Josh, who has been the owner representative here every single time, and I've asked him twice now, and he says it's too expensive. We're not going to do the cleanup. Yeah, we're just going to give the money instead. So if anybody thinks they're going to dedicate that land to the park authority, they're fooling themselves.
Yeah, the $108,000, that's cheap money. That's so cheap.
Okay. Steve, did you have any comments?
Yes, I do. Hold on. I guess to a large extent, I agree with Cynthia. I basically oppose it because I think the decision is to not reduce the size of the building. They're not considering energy saving alternatives such as hot data centers. They're insisting on diesel generators. They should be trying to, since everybody is trying to bring in data centers, there should be an effort to reduce the electrical use of these data centers to minimize brownouts and outages and to facilitate additional data centers. And I keep hearing every day that EVs are taking off like crazy. The grid needs to be able to charge these large numbers of EVs that will be on our roads shortly. So for those reasons, I guess I oppose it.
Yeah, I think he may be silent, but looks like
Yeah.
Scott has his hand up.
So Cynthia had her hand up, and Scott, you haven't spoken yet. Why don't you speak? And Cynthia, if you've already spoken, you can put your hand down.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Hi, this is Scott Corvette, Pleasant Valley. I'm over here, Jeff, in the community Sully meeting with 5 of our friends. I didn't get the notice on time, so I'm able here versus to speak versus speaking in person. So thank you for the virtual notice meeting. If you look at, let's do some of the numbers. It's like the individual that commented that nobody's talked to the water authority. We aren't really even doing some simple of the back of the napkin math. And that's been one of the problems that I've tried to experience from the homeowner's value standpoint. Let's look at the auto park. It generates $45 million a year in taxes to the county, specifically. The auto park is a destination. People come off airplanes, come down to Dulles and buy planes and have their family members drive home. It's a destination in our area that's been planned and utilized. The original planning could have been an auto park. There's still plenty of dealers and CarMaxes that might have taken that spot or could. If we're talking about the 850 parking spots, and if it's already in the example that it's there, go look at BWI. Anybody that had adjacent parking spots turned them into parking lots for revenue with ride shares back up to the airport. Wait until that continues to happen in this facility versus not. We had over 494 homeowners in Pleasant Valley specifically. I think it was Mr. Hart that mentioned the questions from the community in Pleasant Valley. They've been researched, they've been studied. We have 494 letters of opposition as citizens in the Sully district delivered to Kathy Smith at her office about 10 days ago, letting her know that the constituents and the citizens of Pleasant Valley are in the process of opposing this. And we also believe, which has been stated at 2 or 3 of the meetings, we will lose significant home value. If you have 500 homes and take 10% on the average home, we're going to lose over $30 million in home equity by having this monstrosity in our community. We're going to see it, we're going to hear it, we're going to feel it in everyday life in our community, and people want to put it in there. And that is a relatively wrong piece. When you look at the final part, Jeff, of this, when you take a look at noise and the octave levels and the spectrum levels of where people are living and how they work, this changes their health, it changes their life, the sound. In every one of these presentations, Jeff, and I wish Evan was here today, he keeps calling it the affected area. The affected area, and he won't tell anybody how we're going to be affected, by what we're going to be affected. He said that the equipment has been proprietary to them versus in the public domain, which will be affecting the citizens of the community here. It's gone beyond belief that that's even acceptable. It's like the Eighth Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment to its citizens through development in residential areas that were meant to be non-residential for the people that want to live there. And it's just obscene that we've reached this point in our community. I want you to fully oppose this as a Sully district. I want you to fully look at the losses that people will take financially. It's not just one time, it's when they bought into their homes. If you bought in the last 2 or 3 years, you may be underwater. You may be underwater more. And you're going to wipe this area out with these types of rush to the bright and shiny object that made you a tax base. By putting in another auto park, you'd be about the same tax base as you would be already. So it's not an automatic win. And these people, when they talk about sophistication, Jeff, they're waiting for you to put up all of this information. They're going to go sit in a conference room with like 30 attorneys, and they're going to sit there and watch your video and look at it and write down all the points that they need at the planning meeting and the supervisor level meeting. It's a game to them, but it's where we live every day. I want this board to step up, block this project, and make it right for everybody that lives in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John, do you have anything you want to say? Mr. Litzenberger.
Yeah, I'm unmuting myself.
Excuse me?
Well, when I talked, Evan called me about 2 months ago. I told him the main concerns were the RPA, how to fix them. He didn't do that. I don't blame Evan. I blame his client. And as far as the noise from the generators, they have mufflers that go on diesel engines. I said, you should proffer those on those. They didn't do that. And then I said, as far as the emissions, you can put a catalytic converter on a diesel engine, whether it's a truck or a generator on top of a building. They didn't do that either. So although they talked the talk, they didn't walk the walk. So I think we ought to make a motion to deny this and move on.
It looks like Jim Hart has his hand up too.
Go ahead, Jim.
I did. I wanted to hear from Lou if Lou wants to go, but
Well,
let Lou go, and then
I could go a little bit. I think everything I've been hearing for now, the better part of an hour on this, totally agree with. If I had to simplify the expression, I would say this proposal is an abomination. It seems to violate about every potential aspect of the adopted Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan in this portion of the county that it physically can. I don't think there clearly is no one on this call, and clearly there has not been anybody attending any of the face-to-face meetings that have been conducted, other than the applicant and the applicant's consultants, that have expressed any positive views about this project. I think we should, in the strongest possible wording, express our full and complete opposition to this proposal And Dillon rule or not, strongly request that every member of the planning commission refuse to accept this proposed action. And beyond that, a similar separate letter to every member of the Board of Supervisors requesting the same thing. With a final comment on both of those letters, simple question, would you, as a member of the Planning Commission or a member of the Board of Supervisors, be willing to live with your family in the Pleasant Valley community? Simple yes or no will suffice for a response. And now I'll turn it over to Jim.
Okay, Jim, did you say that you had a proposed motion?
Did I say that?
I thought you said you had a motion prepared.
No, Bonnie asked me and I said, absolutely not. No one asked me to do anything.
Okay,
But
so
if I may, let me just
Go
follow
ahead.
up on one thing Scott said. I didn't know about the 494 letters, but giving them to Kathy, I can only imagine what shelf they've been put up on. She and somebody said, or Lou said, nobody is for this except the applicant. Well, I saw Kathy in those meetings. Kathy is. She's outnumbered, but she's for it. Scott, the suggestion I was going to make was, if you haven't, and maybe you have already, or Scott and Cynthia, if you've got 494 letters or however many, send them to the Planning Commission as well. And they'll have to, staff will have to distribute them so all the commissioners will get them, and then they're not just sitting up on a shelf in Kathy's office.
Yes, we actually are planning on doing that. We had to scan them all in, of course. So what we were going to do was send a representative letter, the one that's just a blank, that people signed, and then present the rest of the letters at the Planning Commission hearing on Wednesday night.
My suggestion would be, if you can, start emailing them now. Email them to the Planning Commission office so that they're going to get email after email, that they understand the community has not bought into this. Kathy is relentless, and she always says, oh, it's just a couple people. It's the same couple people. And she gets her 6 votes to get whatever. I think if the commission sees 494 letters from Pleasant Valley, they may begin to understand that this is not just, another Kathy Smith thing, that it's just a couple people. It's the same couple people. Don't listen to them. Somebody said something else, but I'll shut up. I think.
Well, no, you're right about that. And I think beyond just sending it to the Planning Commission, I would send copies of that to all the major news media as well, print and electronic. They get a big pile of letters like that, they're going to say, what the hell is this about?
And Cynthia, were you talking to the same TV reporters that you were the last time?
Yes.
Do they know about Wednesday night?
Yes, as far as I know. I mean, I sent them emails, but nobody's bitten yet, so I don't know.
Well, maybe if there's a resolution tonight, maybe maybe that makes a difference. I mean, Jeff, if you're asking me, I can put something together. I really hadn't, and what I would have thought was, if I had it in writing, then you could look at it and vote on that instead of sort of after the fact. But I think I think it's simple enough to say there are environmental and infrastructure impacts. There is obviously the community has not bought into this, and we're increasingly aware of the impacts of data center uses on Northern Virginia, on us, and that this is a use that, or this is an application which they don't have to approve. This isn't by right. They're asking for things that they would have to be given. We don't support it. Again, I think if they'd been here and answered some more questions, I don't know that we ever would have got there, but I think it would have been a better application than it is. And they don't need diesel. They don't need diesel forever. They don't need diesel if they, I mean, even if they went to tier 4 diesel, something like that. The transportation is ridiculous. This question, oh, that was the thing I was thinking of. Lou had asked about, would the board of supervisors members want this? If a truck tips over on that access road, or if there's some terrorist event, God forbid, on those diesel storage tanks, and the diesel goes down into the stream, what's the plan? Who's cleaning that up? What's the emergency response to that? Why are we putting all this diesel in a stream valley above the reservoir and then saying, oh, well, we're comply with all the regulations? Well, of course they'll comply. They have to. But what happens if the unthinkable happens? And we've seen in other jurisdictions where a truck tips over or something happens and 40,000 gallons of diesel get into the stream. Do we shut down the reservoir? What do we do? And that seems to me is even it's like a national security kind of thing. That reservoir, people that, as John says, there's a lot of folks on wells, but people who aren't on wells are getting their water from the reservoir. So what are we doing about that? Why are we teeing this up for failure? What's this applicant doing beyond what the bare minimum regulations are otherwise? Or maybe there's something, but they haven't answered those questions. What would a board of supervisors member who isn't on a well, who's drinking from this reservoir, what do they have to say about this? Are we now vulnerable to terrorists who blow up a diesel truck and the fuel goes into the stream? What are we supposed to do? Has that question been answered?
Well, and then more realistically, I think also earthquakes, tornadoes. I mean, Mother Nature has a hand in some of this too.
Yeah, but we're all aware that this is the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. But nobody planned for 9/11. And I don't believe that most data centers, other than for a standard level of security, are planning for terrorist attacks on the 9/11 scale. My wife points out, God forbid something happens, we're so close to DC. You put your head behind your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. In elementary school, we sat underneath desks and hoped that would save us. It won't save us then. It won't save us now. So we can't plan for that. And I don't think it'd be wise for us to have every site do that planning. But there are a couple of hands up. I see Scott still got his hand up, and I see Steve. Now, Steve, why don't you go next?
Okay, quick question, and this may be more of a question for state. I think last year, I mean, this obviously is a local rezoning, so this may not apply. But last year was I think the warmest year in recorded history up until that time. And this year is even warmer. And next year will probably be even warmer yet. So how do we?
Hold on, Steve. We're gonna go in that room.
Where does that get
Scott,
addressed?
you have,
I mean, they want to keep on increasing electrical use to the nth degree. Where does that get addressed?
Steve, can you
Steve,
hear me? Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're getting feedback from you somehow, and it's all gobbledygook. We know you're talking, but we can't hear what you're saying.
Maybe you're.
Or maybe it's not,
I'll
maybe it's
try
just me,
again.
but I can't hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay. So the question is, I thought this might be a question for state. Last year was the warmest year on record up until that point. I think this year is even warmer. Next year will probably be even warmer. So where does that get addressed? Northern Virginia wants to use more electricity than we even have access to. So I just don't know how we address that.
Well, DEQ tried, and then that was a mess.
Okay, Scott, you still have your hand up.
Thank you, Jeff. I sure do. I wanted to follow up on the proposal that we just had, I had heard to have a vote of opposition made for this, and then there was going to be a letter drafted in opposition to the support of this application. And I wanted to see if we could also include with the over 450 homeowners in our community opposing this. I mean, that's like $260 million worth of home equity that's sitting in that neighborhood saying this is not right for us. Our supervisor, which had been pointed out 2 or 3 times in this call, is wanting to continue to blaze ahead as a trail. As this application moves forward with that letter, I'd like to have a vote from this group as well that includes a lack of confidence for the supervisor in the
No,
application.
no. Scott, you're asking for a political statement. This is a Land Use and Transportation Committee. You're
Right.
out of line.
But I thought there was going to be a strongly worded letter of
That's
opposition.
different in land use than what you just stated.
But on the application,
I'm sorry, that's out of line.
I see.
Okay, go ahead. Steve, you have your hand up.
I'll conclude my point. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower my hand. I just didn't hear a response to my question.
Okay, it's Jim and then Jehan. You're mute.
My answer to Steve's question was that DEQ saw this coming, that we didn't have enough electricity for the ones that we already have, the ones that are built now. And they had proposed the 2 variances, and then that sort of went sideways, and that didn't get resolved. But I think DEQ is aware that we don't have enough electricity now. We may not have enough water either. That's another category of this. If there's a drought, do the data centers get first crack at the water? I mean, yes, if the conditions don't say something else. There's no cap on the electricity or the water. The resolution, I guess, we can put something together, but I wanted to answer somebody's question, and now I forgot what it was, so I'll just shut up and let someone else go, and then I'll remember it.
Lower your hand, Jim. Next, Jehan.
I assume that generally the resolution will speak to, and perhaps this can address some of Mr. Gorvet's concerns, the lack of infrastructure planning. The staff report mentions nothing about the state of our infrastructure, the projects that are in the pipeline, and what this project would add to that burden. And can we meet the burden, or are we all going to be taxed to death or run out of water or whatever? Anyway, the lack of infrastructure planning in general. And that certainly is a matter in my mind that harkens to a lack of confidence in the Board of Supervisors and how they address things, but that's certainly not what we're going to say in a response to a land use application.
Thank you, Jihan. You can lower your hand. Jim, your hand's still up. You're still
Remember
up.
now, but to Scott's point about the 494 neighbors or whatever against it, you're not alone. And I live in Virginia Run, so does John, and Jay, I think, couldn't be here tonight, but we have a lot of folks that are downhill and downstream from this on Cub Run, and there are people in Virginia Run that don't want this. We're not going to see it. We're not going to hear it like you all are, but we don't want this dirty use uphill from the reservoir. It's not just Pleasant Valley. There's other folks along Pleasant Valley Road that don't want this.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see no further hands up. Okay. It seems to me that there's a consensus that we should object to this nomination. I have no reason, I don't think there's anybody here who spoke in favor of it. So I will entertain a motion to object to it. I will then ask for volunteers to flesh out something that we can write and then resolve over the course of the week in editing mode and send it out next week. I want to also point out that the futility of sending emails and messages to everybody and his brother and sister in the county, state, and federal legislature. As an example, I got back a nice letter from Senator Kane that said, this is a local matter, and in no place in his letter back to us, after I sent out about 20 letters earlier on the other situation that we had earlier the year, did he actually mention the item that we sent to him. He just had a form letter that said, this is local, here are the people to contact. So there are many cases where we're just blowing in the wind, but that's a good Bob Dylan song anyway. All right, so is there a motion on the floor? Cynthia, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make one more comment. The fact that Dominion Energy is going before the SEC with their IRP, that they are actually having to pull in electricity from Maryland, West Virginia, and even as far away as Ohio. I think the fact that Tim Kaine is punting this as a local issue, it's no longer a local issue.
That's a different local issue. This is an issue that we wrote about on a different topic earlier, and we sent letters out to everybody and his brother, and Tim just said, local, don't bother me. But that wasn't on this topic, all right? So you can complain about his actions, but not about this action. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yes.
Two things. The public hearing is Wednesday night, so next week isn't gonna do it.
Okay, so
It's gonna be like tomorrow or never. You want it to be a letter from you and John, or a resolution from the committee that you and John forward, or what is the document that we're
we're
doing?
going to do our normal, the joint Sully District the joint Sully District Land Use and Transportation Committee recommends a vote of no on this item. And no,
Something like, we recommend denial, and as Lou said, in strongest possible terms, concerns expressed include the following,
Yes. Yeah.
something like that.
You should have received over the course of the last 4 years many of my missives on that same motive, and you have seen them that where you say, we don't think this is right. Okay, many of which you and Lewis generated, if I'm not mistaken. Lewis is smiling.
Do you want a draft of this?
Well, if you're going to do a draft, tomorrow's Tuesday, and we need to get it there Wednesday. I don't know whether I can sign up to speak. I guess I can, or somebody else who's really, really wants to speak in our behalf. I'll be happy to cede that authority to somebody else. But
I've got BZA, and we went like 6 hours last week, and I was too tired to do anything. And I've got a doctor's appointment in Leesburg at dawn on Thursday, so I don't know if I'm gonna hold out for Wednesday night anyway. I can write something. I can write something tonight or tomorrow. I don't know that I can speak.
Okay, well, I wasn't expecting you to speak. I was
Okay.
hoping another member would step up for that. Jim, Steve, Lewis, they know me, and as soon as I get up, they go, Plunge is against it. You know, because I very rarely bother to show up if I'm in favor of it. Okay, so if you can prepare something that we've had tonight, you don't need to go into 10 levels of detail, just cover the major concerns. Okay, and if you can get it tomorrow, then I can send it out for everybody to bounce. You send it to everybody, and we'll get the bounces back anyway, right?
Well, I think you want to vote first, but yes.
I understand. But as I said, I have not heard anybody in favor of it. So, with that in mind, is there anybody here who doesn't object to an objection? Hearing none, we all object. Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now there were some people on mute. So if Stephen objected or John Litzenberger objected, I would have not heard them object, but since they didn't object, they didn't turn themselves off of mute. I'm assuming that they all objected as well. I have no objections to objecting it.
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I
Go
totally
ahead.
respect.
Okay, we're all opposed.
Jeff, if we're done with that case, let me just mention that the same night they're doing those townhouses across from Westfield High School, and I guess you all didn't oppose that, or I don't know whatever happened with that, with the power line through the townhouses, if you remember.
Yeah, I think we thought that was a horrible thing, but we said if somebody wanted to live by it, that was their prerogative.
Yeah, I guess so. And one other question on this. I drove by on 50 a couple times last couple of days. I think the sign might be gone, and I don't know if that's a problem, and I don't know if the sign is supposed to be up. The sign was worthless because it was so far from the road, and at 55 miles an hour, you couldn't read it anyway. But if the sign had to be posted, and maybe somebody go by there tomorrow, I didn't see the sign all weekend.
Huh.
But Cynthia and Scott, maybe you noticed it, but I didn't see it. Or John, did you go by there and is the sign still up?
I'm sorry, I didn't see it, Jeff.
I don't think the sign's there.
Okay.
It was there, but I sent a copy I took a picture of it from my car and I sent it to the planning commission chairman, and I said it was ridiculous because the letters are so small and it's so far from the road. It doesn't, I mean, it might be about a lost cat or lose weight fast or something. I mean, it could be anything.
Okay. All right.
It doesn't tell anybody there's an application.
Let me go over some other items of interest, because this is the main concern that we had for this night's meeting. We've accomplished the mission. As you may be aware, next Wednesday night is the District Council's candidates night, where we've invited the 5 delegates and 2 the candidates for the 5 delegate districts and 2 senatorial districts that represent Sully. We've also invited the Sully school board member candidates and the Sully supervisor candidates to the night on Wednesday, the next week. We are working in conjunction with the Legal Women Voters. The Legal Women Voters are having a set of 4 separate candidates nights, one for board chairman on 2 October, one for the at-large school board members on 5 October, one for the Soil and Water Conservation District members on 11 October, and for the sheriff and clerk of the court on 16 October. So in the past, we had invited those people to our function. This time we're going to defer to the legal room of voters. They will be doing the countywide offices and we'll be doing our own local ones. We don't have candidates for every function yet. I've sent out another reminder tonight. The second item is we remember that we were dealing with the Homeowners Council of Prince William County about 2 years ago. They've come up with a resolution and asked for our concurrence. I will send notices out tonight for people to look at and give me some feedback and tell us whether we have objection to what they're proposing. Next month, we will have the proposed policy plan update that we had originally scheduled for August. It has been postponed for October. And I am planning to have a member of the climate group, climate mitigation specialist from Fairfax County at our Sully District Council meeting in October to discuss electric vehicle charging and HOA environments. I think that's a topical item and people should be aware of that. I'll send out links. The meeting in October for Sully District, because that meeting is during the pre-election you can vote early, and the Sully Governmental Center will be an early voting site. Will be held at the Chantilly Highlands Community Center, where we've had those meetings in the past. And so I'll send out the notices, so you should be aware of that. And Kathy has on the 20th of October, Sully Community Day. You should be aware of that as well. And I'll send out some notices so you'll be aware of this. If you can get me these, your draft, send it out to folks, and tomorrow night I can get some feedback. I will prepare the form letter and schedule somebody to speak at that meeting. If anybody wishes to speak, Jahan or Jim or anybody wishes to speak in my stead, I'll be happy to have them speak. If not, I will arrange to do so.
I'm afraid I'm unable, but thank you, Jeff.
Name dropping is a skill I've learned by this time. Okay. In addition, don't forget to sign yourself up. If your HOA hasn't paid its dues, please do so. Okay. And, you know, as it's been pointed out, we have been getting less than $100 in dues, but our expenses are way more than that. Between the website, between the WebEx license, between the equipment that we've bought over the last year, we are running in the red. And we've been lucky that the Western Fairfax County Citizens Associations has taken up some of those bills. But if they had not done so, our financial situation would be much worse than it is tonight. Okay, so any other comments or questions? Okay, one other thing. Fairfax Federation on the 28th of September is going to have Jill Norcross, the Executive Director of Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance, speak about Fairfax County and affordable housing. So if you're interested in that, it's a virtual meeting. I have the link and click. You can find out more information about that and make plans to attend virtually. Okay. Anything else? Anybody have any comments?
Good meeting, Jeff. I move we adjourn.
I was going to say that. Thank you so much, everybody. Everybody have a great night, and see you at the government center next Wednesday for the candidates night. We should have a good turnout. We want to outnumber at least the candidates. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
13 possible candidates. Excuse me. There are 18 possible candidates. We want to have at least 18 people there. Okay? At least one-on-one. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Steves. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Joanne, Bonnie, and everybody else who attended. Good night.